Hi, this is number 5 of 12 basic principles of Visnostics, and this one's going to be a little longer than the others because actually this topic came up today, and you're going to see my eyes look down. That doesn't mean I'm lying. I want you to know that I'm actually going to be reading some notes because there's some pronunciation that I can't do that I want to be sure that I get as close to right as possible. It won't be perfect. I don't speak French. So you're going to hear some of those words too. Here's what you're going to get out of today. I think today is an important psychological discussion about graphics and how you can draw your message and imprint it in someone's brain. So I want to start off by talking about the books. Look at this cover behind me. Do you notice that there's no faces? That's done very strategic because subliminally, when there's no face, you don't know what race they are, you don't know much about their personality, what expressions they have, and your mind will fill in the blanks. And I also want to show you, everything about this cover has science behind it. If you travel abroad, you'll notice red. Like, I don't know if you've watched very many of my videos, but you will always see me in red, black, and white, which just happen to be the colors of the book covers, because I want that brand associated with Visnostics. Are you doing things like that? I'm hoping these kind of things will trigger you of the importance of things like color and graphics. The other thing you'll notice is on the front of the books, you see the little quotations or bubbles, because if you look, and let me tilt just a tad, look at the top. Do you wish you could say this today? Is what the top of my books say. So let me show you a couple. Here's one, the one that's behind me. See the bubbles? I'm trying not to get glare. These are thought bubbles. That means you're thinking, not saying. If you flip to the back, notice that the back of all my books say, readers of this book can say this today. And look, these are statement bubbles. And this is what you get out of the books. This is the results of what you're going to get. This is the results of what you wish you could get. So I want to just show you those real quick. So this is the book I recommend that you get. If you buy one of the books, it's so much thicker. It's got reader success stories. And it replaces the original book, which was outdated after 4 months. This is the first one. And notice there's a lot of thought bubbles on the front. And then on the back, there's a lot of statement bubbles on the back. And this is a great cover, by the way. And then I have a special edition, and you'll notice there's only one thought bubble because it's a smaller message and a lot of statements on the back of what can be accomplished. This is the automobile book. This is a statement on the front and thoughts on the back. And the captions are different on both of these covers. That's really important. And then, yeah, that's it on the Visnostics. But even my leadership books, Memoirs of an Angry Sales Pro, Leadership Has to Change. See, the guys are talking to her and what she's thinking, what she's trying to deal with. And then this is the only book that I don't have statements on the back because this is a research project I did, but it is the same kind of data. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, how much thought went into the covers of the books. Now I want to talk to you about what's inside the books. A lot of people have commented about the inside. You know, why is it black and white? Why is it not color? Very important. So the artists that did all of the inside graphics, we spent a lot of time talking about how important it is to tie the content into the graphic because, and you'll read about this in the book, I want you to be able to flip through the book and find the graphic and find your topic that you're looking for. You know, how many books have you seen where you couldn't find what you were looking for because it's all words? And how do you find, and you can't search. If it was electronic, we could do a word search, but we can't do that in a book. So to make up for that, I have specific graphics that are related to the topics, okay? Now I want to tell you a little bit about the artist because we don't do enough of this. All right, so I'm looking at my notes right now because I can't pronounce this. So he studied 2 different artists in the artwork that he did. This one guy, it looks like if I was pronouncing it English, It looks like Georges Pierre Seurat, okay? But it's pronounced Georges Pierre Seurat. And I had to go to pronunciation.com, listen to it multiple times to say that. Georges Pierre Seurat. He is known for initiating the Neo-Impressionism and optical effects and perception. So, but he does a lot of colors. The next guy is the main guy that the artwork is mimicked after. And it's a guy named Edward Gorey, and he just died in 2000. So he's a current artist. Now listen to these quotes. He is known for being able to project in artwork the value of what is left unsaid. And that is so important to say. I mean, we didn't try and match exactly what is said. We tried to match something similar to what was said. And that's really important because your brain will tie the two together and you'll retain it better. The other thing is the way he drew with little dots and little lines for shading, it's hallucinogenic. So hallucinatory logic of surrealism. Why does all that matter? Okay, so now I'm going to explain that to you. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So these are the things that we've been talking about on the 12 principles. Cognitive versus metacognitive. This is so important in the artwork. It's so important because cognitive is what you're learning. So you're reading the book and you're learning the book, but the graphics are going to start triggering your metacognitive and how you can apply it. We're trying to stimulate creativity where you relate the graphics to the message. And it's kind of a workshop to get your brain thinking creatively so that you can take what you're reading and translate it into why you care. And then, of course, we talk about the fight or flight. If readers, and I'm telling you, this is important, if readers, which a lot of salespeople, they lose their attention after a couple of chapters. Because they're avoid, the flight kicks in because they're bored, because it's starting to, how many times have you read a page and you read it over and over and over again and you still don't know what you read because you're daydreaming, you're not thinking. So a lot of the artwork is done specifically to make sure you stay engaged and you don't drift off into another world. The power threes is important because you'll see that if you go back and look through the book, you'll notice a lot of the artwork has a lot of threes in the art on purpose. First person, the artwork is supposed to, like on my covers, this is supposed to trigger you to be thinking of yourself on the cover. So if you do that, I'm trying to pull you into the metacognitive thinking and blend it with the cognitive part of learning the book. Okay, and now this is what our topic is going to be about today. This is number 5. Why do our brains prefer drawings over photographs? So we'll get to that in just a minute. And a lot of the artwork has a lot to do with this next part, which is the retention of the data. And the instant rapport, the number one comment I get from readers is they feel like I'm there. They feel like they're talking to me. And a lot of people don't know this. I sent the book out to be edited and it came back. They took all of the neuroscience out. They took all of the Visnostic out. They made it formal. And guess what? That's why the flight happens to salespeople. They get bored. They sound like everything else. And it's just not interesting. But talking in a conversational type with the slangs and the improper punctuation and all of those things to make it sound exactly the way I would be talking to you is done on purpose. And Pavlov's dog, when the readers reach out to me, it's like we've known each other forever. We have an instant connection and their brains are oozing serotonin and they're usually in a great mood when they reach out to me. And I'm in a great mood because I love listening to the readers. And so it's like an instant instant salivation that happens between us because we're so excited to be talking. And the presentations, if you can take all of this and incorporate it into your presentations, stop using the graphics you're using right now. Stop using photographs. Stop using, believe it or not, black and white is more impactful in your brain than color, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And there you go. This is an example of something from the book, and it's the most important exercise I have in the book, which is the money exercise. And then movement. If you'll notice, if you go out to my website, you'll notice that my messaging is cartoons. And the reason it's cartoons is because you're going to retain it more. You're going to pay attention more. I do use color in mine, but I don't know if you remember the doodle thing that came out I'd say 10 years ago. It was really, really hot 10 years ago. It's kind of fizzling out now, but instead of doing PowerPoints, and like I'm doing right now, people were doing whiteboards, and they were doing whiteboards because it was black and white, and it was very effective. And a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of science behind that, beyond the fact that you're not doing a PowerPoint. And you still had the movement too when you're doing one of those doodles, or the movement when you're doing a whiteboard. And then this is the ultimate goal when you tie all this together with the graphics and the wording and the science behind what it's doing to help you retain it and relate to it, and releasing of serotonin and dopamine as you're reading it. All of these things result in client speak. So I'm trying to simulate in my books exactly what I'm trying to teach you to do. I want you to be able to feel what your clients are feeling when you start talking their language instead of your language. And I'll tell you, an editor is very formal and rigid and proper of books, and that's not your language. That's not how you talk. And so people fight or flight. The flight kicks in because they don't relate. So see how it's all kind of working together? All of this is subliminal. You don't even know what's happening to your brain, but I'm showing you how your messaging can change. And all of this leads to the RTH formula, as always. Results, how quickly do you get those results? And then the how. All right, so let's talk about this. So much to talk about this. When you have a drawing, notice the drawing on the right. Did you find your eye being drawn to that shadow on his eye? Did you notice the crow's feet on his eye? Did you notice the little hook over there on the right with his little smile? And the shadow on his face, and the partial beard, and the highlights in his hair? It's so much more dramatic when you have it in a cartoon. Like if you've ever had one of those people at like Six Flags or amusement park draw your picture and everything, a trait on your face, they exaggerate it on purpose, but it's what makes that cartoon you instead of somebody else. Those are the kind of things that are done in a visual that's done as a cartoon versus a photograph that you absolutely cannot capture. Also, our brains look out a window and we see the world all the time. Seeing a photograph, especially in an Instagram world and a Facebook world where we're carrying around, I mean, I have 10,000 or more phones. I take a picture of everything, don't we all? And a photo is just not as impactful. But how often do you take the photo and turn it into a cartoon? And I want to give you an example that happened recently. Facebook had this new thing and it's still out there, but you could take yourself, you could go make a little cartoon of yourself. And this was when COVID first hit and everyone was isolated and everyone was nervous, and they were popping up everywhere. Our brains want cartoons. Our brains love cartoons. It makes us feel better because our brain chemistry is released. And I don't know if you remember, but everything got flooded with those profile pics. Everyone was changing them to the little avatars. So there's a reason for that. Like when we were at our lowest, we needed a surge of positivity of serotonin and dopamine. And that's exactly what happened. So there's a lot involved in drawings, and what Dave Weiner, the artist of my books, If you look really close at his drawings, you're going to see a lot of shading. And these are exactly the kind of techniques that he studied to do. But you'll spend more time looking at a black and white drawing than you will a color drawing. Because believe it or not, everything I just named about this guy, like his blue eyes and that all the shading, it's distracting. But if he had been black and white and still had the shading, you would have had a different perspective. And I want you to think about this. When you go through an art gallery, have you ever seen people, the ones that are standing around the longest are the unusual drawings. And sometimes people are looking at stuff going, I think I could have done this art. What is he trying to say? What were they thinking? What is this about? Art is supposed to make you think and ponder. Isn't that what we want when we're trying to sell something? Isn't that what we want when we're trying to train people to do something? So I've had people say, well, you know, your book, the artwork, it doesn't really match the style. Oh, there's so much science behind what you're looking at, and it's all done intentionally. When I do my workshops, I take and I do, just like you've noticed on these slides, there's hardly any words. I use photographs. And at the end, I put the slides back up and have the audience do the recap. So, you know, as a speaker, you're told, or even in writing, you got an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So in a speech, you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and you tell them what you told them, right? We all have been taught that. But how powerful is it if you use these Visnostic principles and techniques in your introduction and your body, when you get to the conclusion, have them tell you what it's about, and it creates an open discussion during the conclusion. I think the conclusion is one of the things people brush by really fast. They don't really they don't spend a lot of time on it. They're ready to get it over with. The audience is ready for you to leave. But when you engage them, now imagine they're tired, they're sick of you, they've been listening to you for the introduction and the body. So at the end, if you can get them to tell you what they just learned, first of all, it's burned into their brain. You cannot have a better wrap up than to put up a visual and have somebody in the audience tell you what that was about. Because you're pulling that information back out. Again, remember the power of threes. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. And then also in the book, you'll notice there's a graph that talks about the way we learn. You can retain 95% of what you learned if you teach it. So at the end, when you have your audience repeat and do the recap, they're teaching and it burns into their brain. I'm telling you, there's so much more science behind Visnostics in these books than you ever dreamed of. And I talk about that in the book, that there are articles that have been written saying, here's how to write a better article. Don't use bullets. And by the way, all of these things are bulletized. I seriously, on my book, I have a link where you can go see one of these examples. They're all over the place. And it'll say, you sure you use more graphics? And there's no graphics. And why would I teach something and not do it? So that's what you're experiencing with Visnostics and the artwork. Look at the artwork very closely. All the imperfections, all the little penciling. By the way, one of the guy that I was telling you about, the second artist, he blended pen and pencil to do his artwork, which is exactly what David's done. And you'll see some of the erasing of the pencils that's left in there on purpose, because we want you to look at it. We want you to notice it. We want you to remember it, whether you like it or not. You don't think you like it, you're gonna remember it. I mean, anyone that's watching this right now, if you're a reader, think about the pictures you didn't like, because you remember them. So they're effective. And then you should be able to remember what I said, what about that picture and what it represents. So I hope this was helpful. This is one of the most powerful Visnostic principles, and it's really important that you get it. So that's it for today.